So this afternoon, I finished the third book in the Bone Quest for the Spark trilogy, which is just titled Book 3. They don't give any special names to the individual books in this trilogy. But anyways, I have now finished this book, and I will try and review it as best I can. Since this is the third book in the trilogy, I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing what this trilogy is and where this comes from, etc. I'll link to the two previous videos I did on the other books in this trilogy if you want some background. But I'm just going to jump in and start talking about plot points. So this is the third and final book in the trilogy in which we expect everything to get wrapped up. Although, interestingly enough, this book starts by introducing a few extra characters. So there is the Pawa, I think it's called the Pawa Chief, his daughter Gerta, who will be major characters in this book. And there's also, let me see if I can find a good picture, Steelman the Dragon, and Portman, his turtle friend. Here they are. Where do they come up with these names, huh? Stillman as a dragon and Porter for a turtle. Okay. So these two are new characters in this third book. They were not in the first two books. And yet enough reference is made to their history that it's very obvious that they were pre-existing characters from somewhere in the Bone series before. So I Googled them and I found them on the Bone Wiki, and sure enough, they had been characters in Stupid Rat Tales, which was repackaged as More Tall Tales. It was repackaged as Tall Tales, which I haven't read yet. I read More Tall Tales, which was the other half of the repackaging of Stupid Rat Creatures. But I haven't read Stupid Rat Creatures, and I haven't read Tall Tales, which I guess is where these two characters come from. I guess in those stories, they were protectors of the forest animals against the rat creatures. Now, the author here, Tom Sniegoski, was actually the author of those other books, the Stupid Rat Creatures and Bone Tall Tales. So I guess it makes sense that he's reusing a couple of his own creations from that earlier work. It does raise the question, though, of how many people have read that book. Because when I started this Bone Quest for the Spark trilogy, I thought, okay, I don't need to read everything in the Bone universe before I start this one. It's a direct sequel to the Bone epic. But it turns out that if anyone there is keeping track of the reading order, you want to read either Stupid Rat Creatures or Tall Tales before starting this book to fully appreciate these characters. But of course, it's not mandatory. Everything you need to know about these two characters is given to you in the book. You just might appreciate it more having encountered these characters before. Then you can appreciate it more when they come back for this callback. Okay. Anyways, our heroes start off flying on the sky ship, Queen of the Sky. But then, very, very early on in this book, the Queen of the Sky pops a balloon, and the characters, let me find the picture. Yeah, I always have to do a lot of flipping to find the pictures. Here we go. The characters escape in various kind of makeshift parachutes or crash with the ship. And so they end up in 3 different groups, I believe, and go on different adventures accordingly. So Tom and Barkley Bone get captured by the Pawa tribe. Yeah, we already did this picture. So the dragon and the turtle are on their own quest. Randolph, the Vinyan priest, is having visions of his wife and daughter. I'll come to this a little bit later when I get to the end of the book, but this never really wraps up in a satisfying way. I thought maybe his wife and daughter would still be alive somewhere at the end of this book. I mentioned that in my review of the first book. It turns out that prediction was wrong. Maybe they really were killed off. At which point you would expect him to make his peace with that or find some sort of new purpose in life, which I guess he does kind of. It wasn't as clear as I would have liked, but maybe that is kind of an end to his character arc. I'll talk about this later, but one of my critiques of this book is that the character arcs really don't come off as neatly as I would like. Yeah, the stupid rat creatures, Stinky and Smelly, wind up with Percival Bone once the ship goes down. He gets angry at them because they are just going to abandon him and make out for their own. Although they later get guilty and come back to him. And I guess that's their character arc. They learn the value of teamwork. Although, yeah, their final character arc is they end up just reconciling with the other rat creatures. Let me see if I can find that picture. There is a picture here of them submitting to King Agag and returning what's left of the rat creature they stole. Sorry, the squirrel that they stole. Here we go. So again, I guess that's kind of a character arc for them. Yeah, the problem with their arc, well, I mean, first of all, they go back with the other rat creatures, which, okay, fair enough. They started out as rat creatures. But it's very clearly established in this book that the other rat creatures are pure evil, especially King Agag, who they reconcile with. So after finding some redeemable qualities, then they just go back to falling in with the other evil rat creatures. It's not a very terribly satisfying character arc, but I understand a little bit that it would have been a little too awkward for them to end up with the humans. Nonetheless, it does bring up the question of why were they on this quest to begin with? I mean, everyone who was on the quest was selected by the Dreaming, who has some sort of undefined powers to influence the real world. And was selecting the members of this quest. And it was emphasized very clearly in the first book that everyone who was selected for the quest, there was definitely some sort of special purpose they were supposed to fulfill. These two rat creatures had little tiny moments of helping out, but they really had no big hero moments which justified their inclusion on the quest. Obviously, the real reason that they were included in the quest is that these were two comic relief characters from the original Bone Epic that obviously the author wanted to have along for more comic relief. But there's really no in-universe reason why they were ever included on the quest when the story got done. Okay, so continuing to flip through until we find another picture we can talk about. Yes, these bat creatures. So the bat creatures kind of come out of nowhere in the third book. In the first two books, the main antagonists, or the antagonists that our heroes can fight, are the rat creatures and the spirits who have possessed humans, or as they're called, the Inhumans. those antagonists are shunted off to the side in the third book, where all of a sudden we find out that there are bats who have been possessed by the evil spirit of the Nacht to become these monster bats, and these are all of a sudden our antagonists in the third book, even though we never heard of them before. And there's some sort of giant monster bat who his origins I don't believe are ever revealed. So the normal monster bats, their origin is that they're normal bats who got perverted by the evil Nacht or his energy. The giant monster bat who's controlling the other monster bats, I don't think his origin was ever revealed. If it was, maybe I missed it. I did my best with this book, but the prose can get a bit bland sometimes, and sometimes I caught myself drifting off a little bit as I was reading it. So if you've read this book, let me know if I've missed something. Did they ever explain the origins of that giant bat? All right, here's Porter the Turtle and Steelman the Dragon, looking at the people who have been taken over by the sleeping sickness. And then Rockjaw, or however it's supposed to be pronounced, Rockjaw, the giant mountain lion from the original Bone comics, is back in this comic. He is, I guess, more or less the same as he was portrayed in the original Bone comics. Somebody who is neither a force for evil nor for good, but somebody who's just simply out for himself. Although he arguably comes off as a little bit more sympathetic in this story than in the original Bone comics, because even though he keeps saying he's only out for himself, he clearly does make a choice to throw in his lot with the good guys instead of the bad guys. But yes, they are in his mountains in the course of this story, and so he becomes a major player. Although it is made clear that he has been eating the other animals in the mountains, so I guess he's not entirely sympathetic. Okay, I'm going to flip some more through here. Yeah, you can see there's not as many pictures as we would wish for, huh? I mean, it would be nice to have a picture on every page, or a picture every 2 pages. But I guess that's not the book this is. Yes, and then here is Tom climbing the rock with the monster bats pursuing him. Yeah, this picture is clear enough, isn't it? In my opinion, it doesn't entirely match the prose around it. So, Tom is fighting off the bats, at the same time trying to climb up the mountain to escape him. And, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't visualizing it right, but it seemed like he would stop and he would fight off the bats. Yeah, actually, let me see if I could find this. So he's stopping to fight off the bats, right? The screeching bats were increasing, more and more of them being drawn to his effort to fight them. Okay, so there's too many of them for him to fight. So I'm guessing you think we should climb, Tom asked, swinging his sword through the thick mist to keep the monsters at bay. Okay, so he needs to swing his sword to keep the monsters at bay, right? If he's not swinging his sword, then the monsters are not kept at bay. Right? Okay, and then, I think that would be best, she answered. It won't be long until they completely swarm this location, and there will be too many for you to fight. Okay, so yeah, there's going to be too many of them to fight. Let's go, he said, quickly reaching down to pick up Lorimer, who is smaller now, and place her on his shoulder before beginning to scale the mountain once more. So again, I'm having trouble visualizing this. He's being swarmed by the bats. there's very soon going to be too many of them to fight. He has to swing his sword to keep them at bay. And then he can decide to just stop fighting them and start climbing up the mountain. And, well, isn't he going to get swarmed? He could hear the bat monsters screeching below them. Wait, I thought they were swarming him from above. Well, I guess he's climbing up now, but... Well, you get the point, right? How is he able to stop fighting them and climbing up if there are too many of them to fight and he's got to keep constantly swinging his sword at them to keep them at bay? Now, that's just one page I pointed out, but this kind of inconsistency, I think, permeates this whole section where he's going up the mountain, he's fighting some bats, he's going up the mountain some more, he's fighting some bats, and you're like, well, okay, but how is it that you ever are able to stop fighting the bats and return to climbing up the mountain? Yeah, it didn't make sense to me. Maybe I wasn't visualizing it right. Okay. Anyways, yes, Stillman the dragon gets some sort of power where it looks like he's incinerating these humans, but actually the humans are completely okay. What he does is just burn the evil spirits out of them, even though it certainly looks like in this illustration they're being incinerated, but it's a special fire. It doesn't burn humans, it only burns evil spirits. Arguably, this picture is a little bit misleading, but we'll leave that. I know, I've got to complain about everything, huh? I mean, on the whole, I did think it was a perfectly serviceable sequel. I just have to nitpick everything. Okay. And flip. Okay. So, yes. Here, the Pawa tribe is being forced to do slave labor to remove the rocks. It's the bats who are causing them to do this slave labor. And there's a sleeping sickness that's hidden behind the rocks that comes out once enough of the rocks have been removed. Once Tom gets the last piece of the spark, he turns into like this glowing thing, and he's able to defeat the Noct. Yeah. So, I've mentioned in my previous two videos that Tom is portrayed as a chosen one in this book. We're going for all the YA cliches here. So, YA cliche number one, the chosen one. And then we find out here in this flashback to his beginning, where he hears the sound of his mother's heartbeat, and he's realizing that he's flashing back to when he's still a fetus, which the dreaming chooses him and places a piece of the spark in him. Now, why does the dreaming do this when he's a fetus? Does the dreaming know he's going to turn out to be very special? I mean, certainly, I'm of the opinion that still by the end of this book, Tom has not shown himself to be very special. Shown himself to be very lucky, and has visions that are given to him by the dreaming. But, yeah. Okay, it's unclear why he's been chosen by the dreaming, but the dreaming puts a spark into him, which with the aid of the dragon causes him to ignite and become like a living fire, with which he's able to defeat the Noct. And let's flip ahead a few pages here. So he's able to defeat the Noct and turns into this living light, and the light defeats the darkness. And where is it? I'm looking for. Oh yeah, here we go. So he turns into a living light and defeats the darkness. And then, as he explains to the other characters, I am the light. So, yes, this obviously seems to me to be a reference to Jesus in the Gospel of John, right? Who declares, I am the light. Either that, or it's just accidental. But it can't be accidental, right? Or, even if it was a coincidence, the author must have known that this would immediately evoke images of the Bible and of Jesus' imagery. So, what are we doing here? Is Tom Jesus now, or are we just playing on cheap Christian symbolism to try and make this seem more deep than it is? Or are we really going full Chronicles of Narnia here? Is this supposed to be a Christian allegory? Grandma Ben and Thorn wake up at the end of this book. Now, they really had nothing to do with this book. At the beginning of the story, they fell asleep, and at the end of the story, they woke up. We don't really need them in this story, other than the fact that, I guess, if it wasn't clear that they had fallen asleep under the spell of the darkness, then we would have been wondering where they were and why they weren't helping our heroes. This raises all sorts of questions. It's not entirely clear to me why some people fall asleep in this book and some people don't, other than, I guess, the dreaming has a special power to preserve the people it wants on its quest. Now, if the dreaming is choosing people from its quest, why aren't Thorn and Grandma Ben chosen from the quest, right? I mean, we saw from the original Bone Epic that certainly they are very capable and would be of good use on a quest like this. Certainly more use than the two rat creatures who go on the quest. Now, the obvious real-world explanation, of course, I think, is Tom Sniegoski didn't want to handle any of Jeff Smith's characters because I suspect he must have known he couldn't do them justice. His narrative abilities do not appear to be at the same level as Jeff Smith, so these characters would have come off as just a pale imitation if he had handled them. But for an in-universe explanation of why the Dreaming didn't choose these characters for the quest, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, moving on. The cave, the mountain collapses. These characters are saved. Greta, the daughter of the chieftain, and Tom have a little kind of puppy love going on, developing at the end of this book. They're young, they're 12 years old, so hasn't developed much yet at this stage, but she is saying Tom's name softly. He is looking at her with great emotion. It's clear they have feelings for each other, and then it never goes anywhere. She goes back to her people, he goes back to his people. And you think, okay, well, what was the point of that? It's one of many character arcs which is teased but just doesn't go anywhere. And then Tom, the chosen one, goes back to being a turnip farmer with his parents. And you think, okay, I guess I already talked about this one, skipping by that picture. He goes back to being a turnip farmer with his parents. I don't think there's a picture of it, actually. So I'll just... again, his character arc is not really as clear as we may have wished. For something that starts out as just a very clear, cliched character arc, right? Like the turnip farmer boy who's stuck on the turnip farm, dreams of greatness, dreams of adventure, goes off on the adventure, and then just comes back to being a turnip farmer. Now, the other characters in the quest say, okay, well, you're going back to being a turnip farmer, but it's clear that you can no longer be the turnip farmer as you were before because this adventure has changed you. And maybe it has, but everything Tom got on this adventure was just the given to him by the dreaming. It's not really clear that he was forced to learn and grow and develop. And it's not clear that anything he learned on this adventure is going to be of benefit to him in the future. He certainly didn't make any connections with Thorn or the Queen or the Palace Guard. I mean, at the beginning, he wanted to be a Palace Guard. At the end, he and his friends have saved the world, but nobody knows it. So, he's stuck again being a turnip farmer. It's not clear how he's going to get out of this. Although it is teased at the end that there are eyes watching him from the forest. Meanwhile, Ted the Bug from the original Bone comics shows up and lets Percival know that his brother and sister are out in the valley waiting to be rescued. His brother and sister are the parents of Barkley and Abby Bone. And this is another character arc that seems a bit bungled. So in the first book, we start off establishing that Barkley and Abby, their parents have disappeared. They have abandonment issues because of this. They want to find their parents. And you would naturally expect that their character arc is rescuing their parents from the valley by the end of this book. But instead, we just get a very brief teaser in the epilogue that their parents are out there and they're going to go out and rescue their parents next. So a new adventure, which is kind of wrapping up that character arc, I guess. But again, it seems in a bit of a bungled way, right? Like that's not the way they teach it in writing schools, right? If you were going to do a more satisfying end to that character arc, you would have had that happen within the story where they rescue the parents. Not, oh, by the way, and then in their next adventure, they were going to rescue their parents. That next adventure, which we are not going to tell you about, the end. Now, there are enough things hanging by the end of this book that I suspect, I don't know if this information is out there anywhere on the internet, but I suspect somebody was originally planning that this would be the start of a longer series. So, start off with a trilogy. If the trilogy does well in sales, maybe you'll have this whole long series of Bone YA novels, just like the Animorphs or the... what else is a good example of a long-running YA series? Whatever. One of those long-running YA series. Maybe that's what they were hoping for. And that's why they left so many plot threads not cleanly wrapped up at the end of this. And then the sales didn't justify it. And then they didn't do it. So, things are sort of wrapped up, but things are still left hanging. Either that or it's just the author didn't know how to properly wrap up his plot threads. One or the other. I suspect the former. I suspect they were leaving stuff open because they wanted to do a series. In a way, as much as I complain about stuff, and I know I've complained about a lot, it's a pity this didn't develop into a longer series, maybe, if that's what they were originally thinking. There was still some potential here. Okay, I'm out of time. I'm going to have to stop here.